Unions are afraid of elections.
The subcommittee is meeting today to hear testimony on protections for employees' rights by ensuring fair elections at the National Labor Relations Board. So good morning, everyone, especially to our witnesses. Thank you for being here, and welcome to today's hearing. And now we recognize Mr. Aaron Solem for your testimony.
Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I've been practicing labor and constitutional law for over a decade on behalf of individual employees at the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation. Since its inception in 1968, the foundation provides free legal aid to employees who wish to exercise their rights to refrain from joining or assisting labor organizations and to freely choose whether or not to be represented by such organizations. Now, the principal purpose of the National Labor Relations Act is to protect employee free choice. The Act gives employees an equal right to choose to join a union and to refrain from joining a union. Former Chairman Ms. Camara did an excellent job in his oral testimony and his written testimony describing the Joy Silk regime that the General Counsel is attempting to bring back. But I want to address what happens during a card check drive and how hard it is for employees to get a secret ballot election to decertify a union. In a card check, an employee can be cornered by a unionizer at work or at home. It could be one organizer, but sometimes it's more, 2 or 3. They present a card to the employee asking them to authorize the union to become the monopoly representative. But there are many documented cases where employees are threatened, pressured, harassed, and tricked into signing cards. The union organizer may cajole the employee by telling them that the card is just for more information or just for an election. The organizer can tell them that a majority of employees have already signed and that the other employees will know if they don't sign. Worse, organizers have made threats of violence to employees who may not wish to sign. This is coercive conduct that would not occur when someone is looking over a secret ballot in an NLRB conducted election. For example, the following activity is not allowed in board-conducted secret ballot elections: prolonged conversations with prospective voters in the polling area by union or employer representatives, electioneering among employees waiting in line to vote, speech-making by a union or employer to masked groups within 24 hours of the election, a union or employer keeping a list of employees who have voted as they enter in the polling place other than the official eligibility list, and a union or employer handling ballots. But similar conduct occurs by union organizers in every single card check campaign. The place where the union confronts an employee with the option to sign an authorization card is the functional equivalent of the ballot box of the polling place. When an employee signs or refuses to sign an authorization card, he or she is not likely to be alone. This decision is going to be made in the presence of, like I said, 1 or more union organizers. This will also likely occur after a union mass meeting. In either event, the employee's decision is not secret, as in a board-conducted election, because the union knows who signed and who did not. Now, the General Counsel is working hand in hand with the board to ensure that it is easy to get a union in through card check, but hard to get the union out. After a union is recognized, if employees want to exercise their right to a secret ballot, they are barred by the board's proposed rule, which brings back in full force the voluntary recognition bar. This means that an employee cannot file a decertification election for 6 months and up to 1 year after a voluntary recognition. Similarly, if the union and employer sign a contract, the contract bar will bar a decertification election for up to 3 years. After a card check and a mandatory recognition under the Joy Silk regime, there may be a bar for employees seeking an election for up to 4 years. Similarly, the board is bringing back the repudiated and heavily criticized blocking charge policy. Under the blocking charge policy, a union can block an election simply by filing an unproven, meritless charge to halt an election. The prior board, under the leadership of Chairman Ring, modified the blocking charge policy to remove its worst excesses and ensure that most decertification elections proceed to a prompt vote. The blocking charge reforms have been a success. Most of the employees I represent can now file and promptly receive timely decertification elections. The reforms have not been perfect, but bringing back the blocking charge policy will be a massive loss for employee free choice, the principal purpose of the Act. So in closing, Card checks, mandatory recognitions, election bars, and blocks undermine employees' right to refrain from unionization. This committee should take action to ensure every employee receives a secret ballot, and unions can no longer unilaterally halt decertification elections from occurring. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll recognize Mr. Allen from the great state of Georgia.
And as you know, my home state of Georgia is a right-to-work state. This seems to be very common sense labor law to me, as it allows Georgians to provide for their families without being forced to pay union membership dues as a condition of their employment. Yet the Democrats' PRO Act would supersede right-to-work laws in 27 states in order to force Americans into paying union dues. Unions often claim they need to be able to force workers to pay union dues in exchange for their representation. Can you explain the flaws in this argument?
The flaw in that argument is that it's not a free rider, it's a forced rider problem. So the employees that I represent are represented by unions that they don't want and may have never asked for. So instead of being taken on a free ride, they're taken on a forced ride. Now, as we've discussed today earlier in our written testimony, if they want to get rid of the union, it's very hard because of the NLRB's various blocks and bars, most of which are non-statutory.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. We will now recognize Congressman Smucker from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you holding this hearing today. It's been a great discussion. I think it's is it Solem?
Solem.
Solem, I'm sorry. Mr. Solem, you know, you talked about the secret ballot elections, which I think, you know, it's a fundamental principle in a democracy, and I think it's so important. Why is it that we would move to a system that moves away from that when employers are making, or employees are making a very important decision about what they want their workforce to look like? Why are we seeing a trend to, you mentioned a card election, why would that be?
Thank you for your question. I mean, just to speak about the importance of the secret ballot first, you know, the secret ballot protects privacy. It ensures that no one knows how you voted. It protects against intimidation. And finally, it is final. During a card check campaign, someone can be solicited time and time and time again until they finally give it and they say, oh, I'll just sign the card. And so a secret ballot election puts it at the end. The reason you're seeing a turn away from the secret ballot and towards something like mandatory recognition is that unions are afraid of elections, just like they're afraid of elections in decertification elections, just like they want to bring back the blocking charge policy, just like they want to have recognition bars. The purpose of the act is employee free choice, and all of these things undermine.
Thank you, and I'm already out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smucker. And now we will recognize Mr. Banks from Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2006, unions spent $427 million on political activities and lobbying. But in 2020, that number jumped to nearly $800 million. Several $million that these unions have given away to groups like Planned Parenthood and the Center for American Progress. Mr. Solem, I mean, what is the relationship between labor unions, political giving to causes like Planned Parenthood and gun control causes? I mean, why would a labor union funnel money to causes like that?
Labor unions are political organizations that have become more political over time. And in fact, I would say that that is what you were speaking about, why lots of rank and file members are alienated from their unions, because the national group doesn't represent what are their individual views. The employees I talk to often want to get rid of unions in part because they find them divisive in the workplace, but also too political. Lots of the employees that I represent wanted to certify unions because they're far too political, and also they want to exercise their right to work. They want to be able to work without contributing to an organization that is political.
Are labor unions becoming more and more so a fundraising arm of the Democrat Party?
Over time, unions have become very political. Unions give most of their money when they contribute to politicians to Democratic politicians. But you know, the individual employees I represent care about their ability to exercise their rights under the Act.
Yeah, it's very troubling. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. And now we will recognize Representative Burleson from Missouri.
Thank you for this hearing. how did we get to this point where we are allowing businesses through the coercive force of government to coerce people into joining an association that they philosophically disagree with? Mr. Solem, what's the history here? And I think it began with the Sherman antitrust laws.
Essentially, federal law, the National Labor Relations Act in Section 8A3.
Or the Wagner Act.
The Wagner Act, right. Allows a employer and a union to agree to a contract that would require the forced payment of dues and fees. Now, as you said, this violates an employee's fundamental right to earn a living, because if they don't pay, they can be fired as a condition of employment.
Right. My state of Missouri is a closed union or forced union shop state, yet we're surrounded by right-to-work states. And you know what I hear every day? The sucking sound of jobs leaving the state of Missouri and going into states where workers have economic freedom. Why are those states growing and states like Missouri are not growing as fast?
Freedom is popular. Many businesses say that they'll only start jobs or start businesses or bring jobs to right-to-work states. And right-to-work is a proven job creator. The latest data, the National Institute of Labor Relations shows that right-to-work states have double the job growth of forced unionism states. But even more important than the economic argument for right-to-work laws, I think what you touched on earlier is that it's a fundamental freedom.
Thank you, Representative Burleson. And now we will recognize Chairman Fox from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here for this very important hearing. Mr. Solem, recently employees at several Starbucks stores have filed petitions to remove Workers United. I understand the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation is providing free legal services to Starbucks employees in New York who filed a petition for a vote on removing Workers United as the employee representative. Why are these employees seeking to remove their union after just 1 year of representation?
Thank you for that question, Chairwoman Fox. And yes, I and a few of my colleagues represent Kevin Caesar, who is a petitioner at the Starbucks Roastery in New York City, who recently filed a petition. Now, I want to add that his petition is actually supported by a majority of his employees. So under the General Counsel's Joy Silk theory, if it applied to decertification petitions, Starbucks should be required under the Act to withdraw recognition if you applied her theory to decertification petitions. But to answer your question as to why these employees want to want to decertify the union, is Mr. Caesar has stated he's found the union divisive in the workplace. He's found it too political, too interested in other issues. And also there's been statements that most of the employees who organized the union have left Starbucks. Now, there's been reports in recent days that Workers United was paying salts or paying people directly to work for Starbucks in order to organize. I don't know if that was the case there, but according to employee statements, most of the ringleaders at that store organized in the union have left.
Thank you, Chairman Fox. And again, I thank all of our witnesses. I thank all of our members who participated today. Without objection, there being no further business, the subcommittee stands adjourned.